Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India. Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Today we will look at an introduction to the field of civil aviation. The outline of today's session is as follows. We will first spend some time trying to understand the contribution of civil aviation to the economy, both the direct contribution and also the indirect contribution. We will then move on to taking a look at the stakeholders in the field of civil aviation. We will move to a brief look at the distribution of air traffic all over the world and how it has changed pre-pandemic to the post-pandemic between 2018 to 2021. We will look at some important features and pointers of the current civil aviation environment, and finally we will spend some time trying to look at the ways and means in which one can hope to generate profits in civil aviation. There is a very interesting saying regarding civil aviation, that if you want to be a millionaire in civil aviation, the best way is to start as a billionaire, and then you will definitely become a millionaire. So, here is the first part, the contribution of civil aviation. Civil aviation is a huge contributor to the growth of economy. This graph indicates the projected increase from 2006 to 2026 over a period of 2 decades, how the civil aviation sector is expected to grow worldwide more than double from about $1.5 trillion total economic benefits to approximately $3.9 trillion in the year 2026. So, we will notice here that the bottommost portion, which is the aviation or air transport, that is the direct contribution, and then you have the contribution which is indirect, then there is some induced benefit, and finally air transportation is a system that encourages tourism to a large extent. So, there are huge improvements in the tourism, it acts like a catalyst. Okay. Here is some idea about the economic influence of air travel. In fact, many economists believe that growth in air transport of a country or a region is a direct indication of the economic development of that country or region. According to them, there is a one-to-one correspondence between the growth in air transport and the economic development. We all know that rising disposable income leads to increase in leisure traffic, or it acts as a motivator for higher amount of leisure traffic. So, as the disposable income of a society increases, you will notice that the propensity to travel as a leisure tourist will also increase. But trade and commerce are the agencies that push or drive the business travel and the air freight. As the trade and commerce increases, there is a higher propensity for businessmen to travel to strike out deals or to meet the prospective customers, and also as and when there is higher levels of commerce, higher levels of sales of goods, there is a proportionate increase in the air freight. Of course, some amount of growth of trade and commerce does not directly go into air freight, but the top level definitely does. And another interesting point is the effect of devaluation of a currency of a country. It immediately leads to a higher propensity for the foreign leisure travelers. So, apart from higher disposable income, lowering of the currency rate or the devaluation of the currency also leads to an increase in the leisure travelers, but that of the foreigners. We will now look also at the contribution of civil aviation. The present day governments cannot fuel high growth in civil aviation, unlike what it was in the early years of the growth of civil aviation, when the entire industry was kept afloat and pumped, the funds were pumped by the governments, but today is not possible. Okay. The private sector has higher economic efficiency. They are able to meet or respond to the changing requirements of the consumers much faster, and they also have a much faster mechanism for distributing goods and services. So, all over the world, the growth in civil aviation is primarily being spurred by the growth in private sector, and contribution of the private sector is much more than that of the government sector in the increase in the growth. Aviation acts like a catalyst for economic growth. Okay. It contributes directly as well as indirectly. Directly, of course, is because of the business generated due to travel, due to cargo, etc., but indirectly also it reduces the cost of trade. Therefore, it allows new markets to be opened up, and also because air transportation is perhaps the fastest mode of transportation, it also improves the speed of moving goods and services. Let us look at the direct and the indirect contribution. The direct contribution comes from the access through airlines, airports, and the business that is generated at airports. The indirect benefit comes from the off airport activities of the passengers as well as the shippers. And whenever there is an increased level of air transportation, you will see that lots of hotels get a boost. They come up near the major airports and tourism gets a boost. This has a multiplier effect across the economies. Okay. So, it is sometimes said that success of a country's economic policies, they depend on air infrastructure available in the country, and that is why many countries are attempting to increase the air infrastructure, because they know that it will be a direct creator of better economical prosperity, higher economical prosperity. Moving on, every system has stakeholders. What are the stakeholders? Stakeholders are the people or group of people who have a direct role in an activity and also in the outcome of that activity. So, who are the stakeholders in civil aviation? Let us have a look. The airlines and the airports are the direct stakeholders, because their operation depends directly on the setting up of the infrastructure for air transportation. The regulatory bodies have a very strong influence in this particular field because they want to ensure safety, and we will have a look at that. Passengers like you and me are also stakeholders because we are using it for our own travel needs. There are travel agencies who are also major stakeholders, and then there is a large amount of technology required to ensure that air transportation occurs safely as well as in financially in an efficient manner. So, the technology providers are also major stakeholders in the field of civil aviation. Now, each of the stakeholders has their own perspective, their own needs, their own requirements. Sometimes they may conflict with the requirement of another stakeholder. So, therefore, there has to be some kind of a give and take or a compromise between various stakeholders to ensure that the system continues to operate. So, what we will do now is we will look at these stakeholders one by one and look at the important and point of view of each of these stakeholders. So, as I mentioned, airlines are the primary stakeholders and the airports, then you have regulatory bodies, and then you have user agencies. Okay. So, these are the major stakeholders. Now, the operations of aircraft at an airport, they affect all stakeholders. Okay. So, all of them are affected. So, let us look at the perspective of each of them. So, let us look at first the perspective of the airlines. What is the main aim of airlines? Airlines are meant to transport passengers or cargo from location A to location B, and while doing this transportation they have to ensure that it happens safely and efficiently. Safely so that nobody is hurt, there is no injury or damage to both the occupants of the aircraft as well as to the aircraft themselves, and efficiently because it is a very expensive business, and unless it is operated efficiently you will not be able to remain in business, you will go into a loss if you do it inefficiently. But behind this purported aim of the airlines is an important stake, and that is airlines are businesses, and these businesses would like to make profits and stay in business. So, there are many things that they do because they would like to make profits and because they would like to stay in business, and there is nothing wrong in that. That is an important point to be kept in mind. Airlines will definitely ensure safety and efficiency in operations, but not at the cost of making profits and staying in business. What are the key issues that are faced by airlines? Fleet planning and route selection refers to how to choose which aircraft to operate, how to decide from where to procure them, should they buy them or should they lease them or should they do a mixed operation. And route selection means on what routes they should fly, from which city to which city, and also what frequency they should offer. Should they offer a daily flight or a weekly flight or twice weekly, etc. Is it morning, afternoon, evening, or only morning, only evening? All these things come under the fleet planning. Airlines also have to do maintenance of the aircraft. For safe and efficient operation, aircraft have to be regularly maintained as per a particular schedule, and maintenance is a very expensive activity. So, but it is a necessary evil, it has to be done. And finally, airlines are interested in operating in an efficient manner during all the mission segments. A typical mission profile of an aircraft when it is used for civil transportation involves the following steps. So, generally you have the first segment, which is the takeoff segment. So, the aircraft takes off. After takeoff, the aircraft goes into a climb. After climb, there will be a cruise segment in which there is almost level flight maintained by the aircraft, and then in the end there may be a requirement. So, when you come down, you might not get the airport available. So, you may have to hold for some time. Okay. and then when you get permission you will probably just land, right. But sometimes the airport is not available, so then you will have to maybe just divert. So, you attempt the landing and then you divert to another place and then again go there and land. So, during all these mission segments there is a requirement for the aircraft to be operated efficiently, and therefore, it is important to ensure efficiency during each of these mission segments. Moving on to the airport. Airport also has some aims. The main aim of the airport is to look at arrivals and departure of aircraft and loading and unloading of the passengers and the cargo. So, airports enable the operations of aircraft. Okay. However, while doing this they have to also ensure safety and efficiency of both the occupants, people on ground, as well as the aircraft and the equipment, but they also have the aim of making profits and staying in business. All over the world there is an increased push towards privatization of airports, just like airlines, because as I mentioned, the amount of investment which is required to maintain or to run an airline or an airport is quite lot, and not many government agencies are able or are willing in the current times to pump that money continuously to keep them in business. Okay. So, therefore, if an airport is to be operated as a private entity, it has to make profits and it has to stay in business. Therefore, they will ensure that the arrival and departure of the aircraft and loading unloading of passengers and cargo is done safely and efficiently, but not at the cost of not making profits and hence losing out and not staying in business. Okay. They also have some issues which they face and they grapple with. Okay. Their principal aim is to ensure that there is a minimum amount of congestion in various elements. As I mentioned, in the air there can be congestion, but there is also a huge amount of congestion on the ground. Many of you who have taken flights would realize that you have to wait for the clearance from the air traffic authorities to start the taxiing operations, and congestion is happening at all segments because the air transportation system is growing. Okay. So, therefore, one has to also look at how to optimize the movement of the aircraft and the vehicles on the surface or at the airport. So, a huge amount of research takes place in optimization of surface movement of aircraft during taxiing, both before they take off and also after they land. Once again, there are various mission segments, and in all these mission segments there is an endeavor by the airport to operate efficiently. Let us look at very briefly how airports earn revenues. Okay. There are two kinds of revenues, or you can say that the revenue earned by airports can be divided into two types, the operating and non-operating revenue. Now, in the operating revenue we again have various subsections. One section is the aeronautical revenue, which comes from three primary sources. Every aircraft that lands at an airport has to pay a landing fee. Generally, this is a function of the maximum landing weight of the aircraft. Then, for the usage of the passenger terminal, the hangars where you store the aircraft or where you keep the aircraft during maintenance, you have to pay rents. If you want to use the terminal, if you want to use the ground based transportation system, or you want to use the gates, you have to pay charges. And then most airports also sell fuel to the airlines, and they make a lot of profit in sales of fuels and the taxes. Okay. There are also some non-aeronautical revenues which are quite substantial, as we will see in the future. The principal components of non-aeronautical revenue are the cost of providing facilities and services to the passengers or to the airlines before they take off and after they land. So, for example, parking of vehicles, for example, rental car operations, all the foods and beverages, that is called as concession sales. All of them come under the non-aeronautical revenue. They are not connected directly with the flying or operating. Now, as far as non-operating revenue is concerned, every passenger who transits through an airport is charged a passenger facility charge, which is a part of the fare that you pay, and also there is some income because of interest and because of grants that the airport is getting. So, this is a non-operating revenue. This is available even if the aircraft is not, if the airport is not operating, if you have certain income on which you are getting interest. So, we will now look at a slight breakdown of these revenues. Okay. So, according to an organization called as the Airports Council International, which is an agency where all airports are members, they have collected the data from all the airports and they have reported that in 2019, just before the pandemic started, the global revenue of airports all over the world was about approximately 181 billion US dollars. Out of this, if you look at the breakup, the operating revenue was as follows: around 54%, more than half of the revenue, 97.7 billion US dollars was because of the aeronautical revenue, and around 40% was because of the non-aeronautical revenue. This is a global figure, this is an average over the world, and the non-operating revenue was around 10.7 billion dollars, which comes to around 6%. Okay. So, you can see that the major revenue is the operating revenue from the aeronautical operations, and then you have the non-aeronautical operations, and finally you have non-operating cost. The return on investment, the global return on investment in the airport field was estimated to be around 6.6%. So, if someone invests $100, you would get a return of $6.6 from the airport. That is the message to be taken home from this particular information. Now, so the contribution of the non-aeronautical revenue is slowly increasing. Okay. So, therefore, many people jokingly remark that an airport is a place where people buy duty free goods. Okay. Incidentally, flights also take off and land there. Okay. That is what it is, because if you are getting 40% or more revenue from non-aeronautical activities, that means flying is not everything, takeoff and landing not everything. Here is some data regarding some the non-aeronautical or non-aviation revenue at German airports in the year 2005. So, this is available from some open source literature. You can see that between 42% to about 18-20% revenue is earned by non-aeronautical or non-aviation features. In India, there is an airport called as the Kochi International Airport Limited, CIAL, where if you notice, the non-aeronautical or non-aviation revenue is also somewhat the same percentage, varying from about 40% to about 30%. Okay. So, it is the same story everywhere. But while we are discussing about Kochi airport, I think we should touch upon a very interesting point. There is something very much unique about this airport. This airport is a power positive airport. Okay. It was the world's first airport to work purely on solar power. In 2015, they became the world's first airport to be powered by solar power, and then they increased the solar installation capacity. So, in 2022, they touched 50 megawatt power, or the installed capacity of this is the installed capacity based on the solar panels located on the airport and also in a place nearby. CIAL produces around 2 lakh units every day and consumes only 1.6 lakh units a day. So, there is a feeding back into the grid of 0.4 lakh units. This airport won the Champion of the Earth award in 2018. This award is the highest environmental honor instituted by the United Nations. So, it is a matter of great pride for us in India, and also in the year 2020 among the small airport, which is 5 to 15 million passenger per year capacity, it won the award for the best Asia Pacific airport by the Airport Council International. So, it is a very unique and very interesting airport, and I encourage you to read about this airport, search about its data and know more about it. Okay, now we look at another stakeholder, and that is the regulatory bodies. They also have a huge stake in operation of aircraft. Okay. What is the main aim of regulatory bodies? Their main aim is to ensure that the safety and reliability of the system is maintained. Okay. So, apart from that, they are also interested in standardizing the procedures which are followed and to avoid unfair practices. If any particular agency or any particular unit is behaving in a manner which is unfair, they will step in and they will take the punitive action. Now, what are the key issues which are of concern to the regulatory body? Their main idea is that everyone who operates any service or any facility at the airport should be licensed to operate it. Licensing is different from qualification. A person could be qualified, but when a person is licensed, it means that there has been an independent inspection of the ability of that person to act and proceed in a particular manner while carrying out the service or while operating a particular unit. Okay. So, this requires training, this requires experience, and almost everyone, even the person who drive the buses at the airport, the drivers of the buses that take you from the terminal to the aircraft, they are licensed. They have a driver's license, but they are also licensed to operate at the airport. Okay. Similarly, the maintenance procedures and the repair procedures which are followed by the airlines are also approved and pre-decided in consultation with the original equipment manufacturer and with the operator. The regulatory agency sits together and sets up some kind of a procedure. They come across what is called as a minimum equipment list, which is the minimum number of items working in the aircraft before it can be released for operation. So, all of these are done by the regulatory bodies, and also they provide air traffic management services. In most countries, the air traffic management is provided by the government or a regulatory agency. Okay. Now, the air traffic management also is provided at various segments. So, you have to provide the service at the airport for surface movement. You have to ensure that when an aircraft is flying between two cities, overflying a particular city, there is en route guidance available. In case of any accident or any incident, we need to have search and rescue services, and if there is an emergency, if there is a hijacking or if there is any other problem, there are procedures and there are systems to provide to tackle the situation. All this is taken care by the regulatory bodies. Then there is also the fourth agency who has a stake, and that is people like you and me, the user agencies, and also the other companies that deal. So, who are the users of an air transportation system? General public like you and me who fly or who send their goods through cargo. Then there are cargo transporters, there are travel agents, and there are service providers. All of them have a stake. What is the key issue with users? Users are interested primarily in safety. None of us as users would like to be flown from a destination A to B in an unsafe manner. Okay. We also look at a certain quality of service, we also look at a certain minimum amount of facilitation. We would like it to be affordable. If in the attempt to make profit, if the airlines or the airports start charging unreasonable amounts, it will not go well with the user stakeholders and they will make a noise. Okay. So, affordability also is something that is ensured. Now, what are the mechanisms? The mechanisms of ensuring that the user's perspective is taken care is through organizations and associations. So, we will have a special lecture on organizations and associations in the civil aviation sector, which try to bring in the perspective of the users. Okay. Let us look at now the demand for air travel. Okay. The demand for air travel is primarily determined by two things, by income levels and how much does it cost to travel by air. And when I say income levels, I indirectly mean the disposable income also. Okay. The cost of travel and the economic progress in aviation will depend upon the world energy demand, and also a huge component of the operating cost of an airline is the fuel charges. They could be as high as 30%, 40%, sometimes even more. So, supply, availability and the prices of the fuel is a very important factor that decides the cost of travel. Okay. And the industry, the airline industry is highly vulnerable to economic cycles and fluctuations in the fuel prices. Okay. Any change in the fuel price or in the economic cycle or any economic event will immediately affect the airline industry. It is almost the first industry to be affected. We saw this during the pandemic also, but we have to also understand that the industry, although it is very sensitive to economic cycles and fluctuations, it also has got a lot of resilience, and we will have one special lecture elaborating how the industry is highly resilient. Okay. Before we move ahead, let us look at how traffic is distributed globally. You will see the variation in the global air traffic and its distribution between 1998 and 2021. Okay. So, if you look at the distribution in 1998, okay, around 42% of the air traffic, global air traffic was in the United States, North America, Canada. Okay. They were the largest chunk, and in South America it was only 6.2%, 25% was in Europe, Russia, 2% was in Africa, 2.7% was in the Gulf, and around 20.1% was, you can say, Asia Pacific region. And in this we have left out India, because we just want to highlight that in India it was about 1.2%. So, in 1998 India accounted for 1.2% of the traffic distribution globally, and the US, North America, Canada, they accounted for around 42%. Let me remind the audience that these are proportional figures and that net aviation saw an increase everywhere. In 2019, the share of the North America came down to 22%, became nearly half of what it was. South America almost the same, it was 6%, it became 5.1%. Europe and Russia 26.8%, pretty much the same. Africa also not much change. Gulf was 9.1%, Asia Pacific 32.6% minus India, and India was 2.1%. This was in 2019. So, 1.2 became 2.1 for India. Now, during the pandemic 2021, the breakup was as follows: 35.7% for North America, 7.6% for South America, 17.5% for Europe and Russia, 3.4% for the Africa, Gulf 10.5%, Asia Pacific 23.3%, and for India it was 1.9%. Okay. So, this fluctuation, if we look at it in a graphical manner, this is what it is. So, we can notice that the blue line, which is the topmost line on the left and the right hand side, is for North America. So, from more than 40%, it came down and then it went up again. Some of the economies, they just remained slowly increased, but almost remain the same. Okay. Now, we will look at the current civil aviation environment. What are the key challenges, what are the features, and what are the interesting aspects of the civil aviation environment today. Today's environment is deregulated and liberalized almost all over the world, unlike in the beginning of the 20th century, when it was highly regulated and there was absolutely no liberalization. Everything was controlled with a tight fist by the government. Okay. This is the period today when we have a lot of alliances between airlines. So, airlines have realized that they have to work with each other for mutual profitability. So, they have created alliances. There are many alliances. Okay. These three alliances, One World, Sky Team and Star Alliance, these alliances are between airlines which operate on long distance routes, mostly on international intercontinental routes. Okay. And then there are also alliances of low cost budget airlines, regional airlines. For example, there is a Value Alliance, there is a U-Fly Alliance, and then there is a Alliance Vanille in France. Another aspect that is relevant regarding the current environment is that it is increasingly being privatized or jointly owned. Okay. Privatization has come in a big way in the civil aviation sector. Okay. The growth in civil aviation is fed by the resurgent economies. Okay. Economies of Asia Pacific, economy of India, economy of many other regions is slowly progressing, and in some countries economy is almost at a stagnation level. So, they have very high demand, but the growth is not as high as we see in China or India or in the Asia Pacific or in the Gulf. Okay. As I mentioned, higher disposable income leads to increased leisure traffic. This is also a global observation, and the pricing is now increasingly being differentiated based on the market. So, we will look at how there is a market differentiation of prices. As I said, today we are seeing products which are based on the market segment that they serve. Okay. And we look at lot of customized services and customized products being offered to address the requirements of specific markets. Moreover, in civil aviation, there is a huge dependence on technology, and advancements in technologies are happening at a very rapid pace, and they are used to enhance revenue, to enhance customization of services and goods, to enhance the resource optimization, and for leading to cost reduction. Now, as part of this particular lecture series, you are going to see a lot of description or examples of how technology is being used in air transportation or in civil aviation to help make it more and more efficient, more and more productive and profitable. Let us look at traditionally how the market was segmented. There were two basic market segments considered: the business travelers, which are interested in schedule friendly departure timings. They are more interested in flying when they want to fly and at times that are suit to them, generally early morning and late evening, so that they can go out in the day and maybe come back in the night. The leisure travelers, on the other hand, are more concerned about the fare. For them, timings do not matter much, what matters much is the cost. Okay. So, therefore, if there are different types of customers with different aspirations and requirements, then you cannot hope to make profits by giving the same product to both of them. Therefore, the product requirements for each are different, and therefore, the delivery of the product also has to be unique. And we see a lot of creativity being brought in, lot of innovation being brought in by airlines to ensure that they address the requirements of their market. So, let us look at the characteristics of business traffic. Okay. As I said, they are the ones who want to fly at a convenient time, both onwards and return, because they are frequent flyers. They do this regularly as part of their normal job. Okay. They are more concerned about the flight frequencies. They are happy if you provide larger frequency, so that they can go and come with lesser time being wasted. Okay. They do not reserve in advance, they normally reserve close to departure dates, maybe few days or a week before the departure, because they themselves do not know when they will be required to travel sometimes. So, they have to travel at short notice. They really do not care too much about the fares. Okay. They do, but not that much. They are more attracted by products that cater to their requirements of ease in check-in, ability to change the flights, ability to operate the flight or take the flight at a time which is most convenient to them. At the other end of the spectrum are leisure travelers. What are their characteristics? They are primarily looking at low fares. Okay. They are attracted to packages which give them integrated deals, okay, as we will see. They prefer midday departures because they know that midday departures are generally going to be less expensive. They usually travel in groups because they try to seek discounts because of numbers. So, let us look at some customized services and products. Let us have a look at some customized products and services which are being provided by airlines today to attract the kind of passengers they have in mind. It is generally said in airline marketing parlance that people buy experiences, not products. Okay. So, if you correctly price the ancillary choices, for example, if you give more options for checked baggages, if you give an option of pre-assigned seats, some customers are going to be very happy. Okay. Then there are differences in the preference of various generations. Okay. So, young people look at the services and products differently, the older generation they look at things differently. So, therefore, the pricing has to be done to give a personalized experience to the passenger. So, three strategies are generally followed. The one is called as mixed bundling, the second strategy is called as bidding, and the third model is the subscription model. So, we will look at all these three personalized pricing strategies one by one. Here is an example of mixed bundling. Okay. So, there could be some airline which will say, okay, we have three kinds of fares. We have a basic fare, we have a better fare, and we have a best fare. I have just given these names randomly. Now, airlines have their own names and their own interesting schemes like Sky Saver and other things. I have just given from three basic names. So, you see the difference now. If you are going by the basic fare, then almost everything is chargeable. In this particular case, for a particular sector from A to B, the basic fare is rupees 2500, but you cannot choose the seat. There are no snacks available complimentary unless you pay. You cannot change the seat, any change is chargeable. You cannot change the date of your flight, it is chargeable, and as far as baggage is concerned, you can carry only your hand baggage. With these constraints, if you want to fly under the basic scheme, you have to pay rupees 2500. Now, if you move to the next level, which is called as a better level here, the seat choice is free, but only the normal seats or the seats in the back of the cabin. Okay. Snacks are complimentary in this case. You can change the seat and you can also change the date of travel, but you have to do at least 1 week in advance. If you do less than a week in advance, you will probably lose the entire fare. In this scheme, they are allowing hand baggage with one checked in bag, but they are putting a limit of 15 kilograms. For this, they are charging 1000 rupees extra. So, for the meal, for the seat choice, for the seat change and the ability to change the flight or cancel the flight or change the flight, not cancel, but within a week you have to pay 1000 rupees more. Now, if you look at the individual cost of all these aspects, they will add up to more than 1000 rupees. For example, for seat choice they may charge 300, for snacks they may charge 400, for baggage they may charge 500. So, that will add up to more than 1000. But if a passenger feels that I would like to go for this particular bundle because it gives me the facilities I normally require, it will be cheaper for the person compared to buying these things individually. So, therefore, they have bundled them. Now, look at the best, the bundle called best. Okay. There almost everything is allowed. You have free choice of a seat, and also you can take the extra large seat in the front, which is more spacious and also more leg room. Okay. Snacks are again complimentary, no problem with seat change. You can change the date, but you can do it within 2 hours. That means till the last day, maybe almost 2 hours in advance, you are welcome to cancel your flight or change your flight without any, may not be able to cancel the flight, but you can change the flight. And you allow hand baggage with one larger check-in bag. You charge for it for 1000 rupees more, whereas if you add the cost of extra large seat or the cost of ability to change within 2 hours or the cost of one more heavier check-in, it may tend more than 1000 rupees. So, this is the way of, this is one way which mixed bundling is taken by airlines. Okay. Let us look at example of bidding. Okay. So, I have taken a very hypothetical example where there is a flight where the economy class fare is 5000 rupees and for the sector the business class fare is 12,000 rupees, just a number, okay, just to illustrate an example. Now, but what happens is that maybe a few days before the flight, they send out a notice to you via SMS or via email saying that, hey, if you would like to upgrade to economy, you can bid, okay, and you can bid an amount between 4,000 and 6,000 rupees. So, notice that if a person wants to fly business class, you have to shell out 12,000 rupees. Okay. But here what they are doing is, they know that some of the business seats are now vacant and those are not going to be filled probably. So, they will go empty. So, why not increase the revenue by luring some of the economy class customers to business class. So, what you do is you just submit your bid. Okay. The bidding normally opens about 4-5 days before the departure and it is stopped perhaps a couple of days before the departure. Okay. So, you bid. Now, if you are inclined to do it, you might say, okay, I am only paying 4,000 rupees extra, that is 9,000 rupees, but the business class seat is 12,000 rupees, no problem, I will put a bid. If you are desperate, you might put larger amount. So, depending on how much desperation you have, you will bid, and according to whoever, so only few of the empty business class seats are made available like this through bidding, because they want to lure the customers to experience the business class, so that tomorrow when they plan their travel, they may be inclined to book business class in the first place. This is an example of a subscription service. Imagine an airline which says that, okay, you are flying frequently on our routes for your flights. So, why not become a member, why not subscribe to us in subscription. So, again I have taken randomly, I have just created 3 examples, the basic subscription, the silver subscription and the gold subscription. So, these are annual charges varying from 2 lakhs to 15 lakh rupees. So, if you are a basic subscriber, then you can take any 12 flights, okay. You can take any 12 flights in a year, but you have to deposit upfront 2 lakh rupees. These flights are only during non-peak times, because if you want to travel during peak time, you have to pay a charge of 10,000 rupees. Okay. And this is only for an individual, so you cannot share with family or friends, right. And everything that you need in the aircraft, food, beverages are chargeable, but you end up getting 12 flights for 2 lakh rupees. If you take silver membership, the number of flights available to you are doubled. So, you can take 24 flights. Again, flying during peak time, there is a penalty of 5,000 rupees, but now you can share your subscription with another 2 people who could be your family members or your friends. So, 3 people can share this amount, okay. And in this particular service, when you fly in the aircraft, the beverages and the food is complimentary, but you can see you end up paying 4 times more money, 8 lakh rupees. You have double the flights, you can share with 2 people, but the cost is 4 times. There is a gold membership, you can fly as many times as you want, you can fly any time you want, you can share it with family and friends, no problem. Okay. But you cannot sell this, you cannot say that I am going to sell the tickets to somebody else. Okay. During the flight, food and beverages are complimentary, but you end up paying rupees 15 lakhs. Now, if you are such a frequent traveler that you keep on, you take more than 24 flights in a year, or you are head of a company which has got 4-5 employees, 10 employees, together you guys travel a lot and you have a huge travel bill, you might find it attractive to join this particular service, where you can get unlimited flights in a year for unlimited number of people, but you have to end up paying 15 lakhs. Probably this amount is very small, probably it should be larger amount, but I am just saying here is an example of how the airline can lure you to give more money upfront. There have been examples of misuse of such facilities in the past also. Coming back to the current environment of civil aviation, the operational requirements directly affect the market segment requirements. Okay. So, market segment, if they require something, you have to bring it in the operations. For example, if the market that you serve consists primarily of business travelers, you will have to look at operating at very convenient or business friendly timings and also providing the facilities they need. The technology in civil aviation keeps changing because there is a continuous improvement and it does not remain static or stagnant, it keeps on changing. So, you have to keep pace with it, you have to keep training your personnel. Okay. There is a large increase in leisure traffic which is being seen over the last few years, especially because of the increasing disposable income, and there is huge competition from other modes of transport. There are as better and better roads are being built, the time taken by automobile or by trains to cover the destination in much shorter time. So, we will see one slide in detail about this. Okay. For example, when is it then people do not prefer to fly as compared to other modes? When there is a huge competition, tough competition from other modes like rail and road on the aspects of price and time. If you have, for example, very fast and convenient overnight trains between 2 destinations, you will not see many flights being offered because it becomes less attractive for people to fly. Okay. And also, if the net time that is saved by air travel is not much, then also people will not fly. For example, I will show you an example. Recently, there is a train service called Tejas Express which has been introduced between Mumbai and Ahmedabad. Okay. So, this train it takes about 6.5 hours between the 2 cities, which earlier were taking about 10 to 12 hours. Okay. There were overnight trains and you would never get ticket on those trains in advance because most of the people who travel both ways would prefer to take the overnight trains. Okay. But this train Tejas takes only 6.5 hours. Okay. It is available 6 days a week, each passenger gets an individual LCD screen, so you can watch your favorite programs, etc., and also you can have free Wi-Fi. So, when you have free Wi-Fi, you can utilize your time to do your work. Okay. The executive chair class fare in this particular train of this fare, actually by the way this fare is not fixed, is just this number I have taken on one particular day, but nowadays they follow dynamic fare pricing. So, when you go and check, depending on how many people are interested, the fare may go up or may come down. Okay. So, the executive chair class, the fare at that time was 2,384 rupees and they allow 70 kg of luggage per passenger. The AC chair car was nearly half, but you can carry only 49 kilograms of luggage. As compared to this, now this is the route that the train takes from Ahmedabad to Mumbai. Okay. There are about 5 stops. If you fly by Air India between Ahmedabad to Mumbai, the flight will be, there are many flights in a day. So, there are daily options available. You have 1.5 hours is the flight journey. You get individual LCD if you go in business class or if you go in some of the flights, but there is no Wi-Fi on in the aircraft today. Okay. So, you can see now the fare is around twice 5898, but the baggage is only half, and if you go by economy class it is 3000 rupees, right, and the baggage is 25 kg. So, now it depends on you. If you are travelling with large amount of baggage and if you can use your time because Wi-Fi is available and the train is very comfortable, the vibrations and shakes are very minimal, they are there but they are much lower, you might as well say I do not mind going by Tejas Express, okay, because it is giving me nearly half the fare and I am getting much more baggage to be carried. So, it depends on your requirement. Okay. So, if you go by air, the route is direct of course, but then you must reach before departure, there is a check-in requirement. Then once you land at the destination, you will have to pick up your baggage. Sometimes it takes 15-20 minutes to half an hour to pick up the baggage, it depends on your luck also. All in all, and moreover generally speaking airports are located little bit far away from the city compared to the railway station. So, all in all a person does the calculations and then decides which one to take, whether to take a flight or to take by train. Another important aspect that we should understand is, okay, moving on. Another important aspect regarding the current environment is, earlier there were a huge amount of subsidies being given by the government to encourage this particular sector. Some subsidies are still being given, but slowly there is a move to remove the subsidies and to make the airlines and the airports operate on their own. Across the civil aviation sector, there are improvements in communication technology, okay, and these improvements help not only communication between the pilot and the air traffic controller, between aircraft to aircraft, etc. There are lots of improvements. Okay. The cost economics are changing with time, and as the operations keep on changing, keep on getting modified, the economics are changing. Okay. Now, over the years we see that there are many niche regional airlines which offer special products to the airlines. They are coming, they are entering the market and they are giving a tough time to the so called legacy or the existing airlines. There is a increasing trend of foreign ownership of airlines. So, there are many airlines within a country which are owned by, or primarily shareholder is by some other airline of a big country, because they want to diversify their risk and they want to go for economy of scale and maybe also sharing of resources. Okay. In general, it is expected that air traffic is going to double in the next decade. Okay. So, whatever congestion you see now, unless we take steps to decongest, you will find that it will become much more. And now we come to the last part of today's discussion, which is an industry which is known to be very cutthroat in operating costs and in profits, very small margins. What are the recommendations given by experts to generate profits in civil aviation? Okay. So, there are some tips available from experts. If you want to optimize the profits, then you have to be very careful about deciding what is the mission of your airline or your system and the consequent strategies which are directly aligned with that particular mission. You have to be very careful about predicting the market demand, and the more accuracy you have in predicting the demand, the nearer you are to the chances of making profit. You also have to decide very carefully on what type of markets you are serving and differentiate your product to each market. Okay. One has to look very carefully at our cost structures. There is a scope for cost reduction in many aspects of operation, but unless there are clear cut strategies followed, it is very difficult to identify these cost structures. Okay. There are huge opportunities in the aviation sector for outsourcing. It is not required that everything that an airline does or an airport does has to be done by the people who are directly employed by the airport. Outsourcing is a huge opportunity in today's civil aviation environment, okay. And we are operating in a regulatory environment which is becoming tighter and tighter by the day, because as and when some incidents happen, some safety issues are highlighted, the regulatory environment generally becomes tougher and tougher. Okay. There is a huge availability of infrastructure now, and many new other infrastructural projects are in the pipeline. So, therefore, the important thing to ensure profit is to match the demand with the right capacity. You know, if you have excess capacity, the airline seats or cargo space in the belly is not something that you can store. Okay. Once the aircraft flies, and if there are no passengers in some of the seats, those seats are empty, they will remain empty, and they will be something like a opportunity lost. Okay. So, therefore, it is very important to remain profitable. You have to match the demand with the right capacity, and therefore, you have to continuously keep looking at upsizing or downsizing the inventory to meet the requirements. Okay. Let us look at some points to ponder on why some markets which have huge potential or which appear to be profitable and hence very lucrative actually fail to deliver. Okay. One thing is that although it is not really a good idea, but monopolies do exist, and these monopolies tend to conquer a particular market and create barriers to the entry of other players. Okay. There are many externalities in civil aviation. Weather is a huge factor which can create havoc with the profitability. Okay. If there are excessive number of players in the market, then you will have, as it is, the pie is very small, and if there are too many players, each player gets a very small piece of the pie, and that can be a problem. In many markets, there is a requirement to do public service, to meet public service obligations. What are these? Basically, any government would ensure or would like to ensure that in the attempt to maximize the profits and to minimize the costs, you should not end up creating a system where everybody wants to operate only in the lucrative sectors. Okay. There are certain areas where we need to provide connectivity and transportation as a service to the society. So, there are some public service obligations. So, either the government directly funds it and says that okay, these routes are not profitable, we know it, but we are going to fund it because we want certain minimum level of connectivity to be available, or they may enforce some public service obligations through policy initiatives, so that they say okay, you are making profits on a particular sector because that is a lucrative sector, some part of the profits or some part of the operations in that particular thing has to be compulsorily deployed in these segments which we want to serve. In India, for example, there are markets which are there are regions in the northeast which have poor connectivity. There are island nations, island areas, there are islands like Andaman and Nicobar and Lakshadweep, plus there is a administrative traffic in Jammu Kashmir region. So, operation in these regions may not be directly profitable for airlines, but certain minimum operations are made compulsory by enforcing the policy. Okay. Then there are several information asymmetries. Okay. It is not a level playing field. There are many things about which some people know more than the other by economic intelligence or by any other means where they invest in this information. And when I am privy to some information which can have an effect in the market tomorrow, I can utilize the information to operate more profitably compared to the others. Okay. So, what do we need if we want to capture the markets as an airline? What do we need? First thing we need to do is you need to provide value based products at the right price. The customers should feel that I am getting good value for the money which I am paying. Okay. There has to be some advantage which is identifiable and sustainable. Okay. Of course, in an environment where there is competition, there is going to be different strategies followed by different operators. Okay. If you want to capture the market, you have to ensure that the public that takes your service identifies and is able to appreciate the sustainability. Okay. You can leverage your brand and image value to create a group of dedicated people who are, you could do this by various means. Okay. By looking at your brand in a very innovative manner, by managing the brand, by ensuring that it attracts the attention of the people, you might actually win over some customers, you will get loyalty. Brand loyalty is a very important thing in the aviation sector. Okay. And then one way in which you can keep on capturing the markets is to harness alliances. Okay. Not everybody is good in everything and not everybody can do everything. So, in the technical areas, in the operational areas, in the marketing area, also in the distribution area, if you team up with strategic alliances with other people, you might be able to leverage the alliance to capture the market and to sustain it. So, what do you need? You need leadership in the marketplace. Okay. You need to demonstrate leadership. You need to create products which cater to individuals and market groups. Okay. If you maintain your reliable schedule and if you have good on time performance, people believe and they have affinity towards you, towards a particular operator. Situations can go bad any time and therefore, one has to have quick response to the situation, one has to manage situations very smartly. This is the era of social media. Anything that happens in an airport or in an airline, sometimes there will be delays, there will be some issues and immediately people start tweeting about it, people start writing about it here and there in social media. Everybody has a mobile phone with a camera, they record the whole incident and it can go out of hand. So, you need to have people available who can manage the situation very smartly. Okay. The economy of the world is evolving and because of that there is a huge competition, and when there is a competition, people have different ways of addressing the situation. So, there are changes in the market and you need to be constantly in the innovation. If you want to have an identifiable edge over the competitors, you need to constantly innovate and improve. Okay. It is very easy to say, but very difficult to implement these suggestions, and that is why it is not easy to remain profitable and to capture and keep the market intact. Thanks for your attention. See you later.